You cannot make a multiverse without breaking a bunch of eggs. Continuity eggs, that is. The very idea of the multiverse was introduced in comics to relieve the pressure of continuity for characters that started as far back as the 1930s who are still walking around fighting crime like they're not 120 years old. But like most solutions, it can inevitably create problems as it solves them. Spider-Man No Way Home has brought the continuity reset button to the big screen, but the multiverse omelet has inevitably left some questions on the table.
Everything's always complicated with Peter.
Ah, the grand romantic gesture. The downfall of many a star-crossed lover who has tragically misgauged how reciprocal those feelings really are. Treat your overtly public displays of romantic intentions like a lawyer in court, folks. Never ask a question you don't already know the answer to. Sometimes that romantic, helpful heart has read the room properly, and the gesture becomes an endearing symbol of a budding romance, especially when you keep it personal and something the two of you share. Like selling your valuable collectibles to buy your love interest with a dark streak a Black Dahlia necklace, her favorite flower. Why? Because the murders, of course. This isn't the first time that the MCU has used something as subtle as a necklace to demonstrate the connection between characters. Before Natasha told Bruce that some girls like a guy who avoids a fight because they know that they'll win, there was a lot of shipping going on between the two super spies of the Avengers, Hawkeye and Black Widow. Thanks to an arrow necklace the Widow wore, turns out that they were just solid friends, and Clint had married a different S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who retired to a farm. Peter passing along his symbol of love to his MJ was a key part of Spider-Man Far From Home, and it was something that she treasured enough to not risk the endearingly damaged jewelry on a swing through Manhattan, not wearing it on the ride on the subways her new boyfriend was about to take her on. Somewhere between the cut where Peter freaks out about being outed and pulls his girlfriend out of the curious crowd, though, she must have fished it out. Because while she was not wearing it at Cut to Black and Far From Home, she was wearing it by Fade Up moments later in No Way Home. Maybe she had it in her pocket or tucked in her shirt. Or maybe the costume department would like to explain to you how hard continuity is in their department, especially from one movie to the next. By far, Spider-Man has the most recognizable phrase in comics in the form of advice that he got from his uncle before Peter lost yet another father figure. And that line, of course, is, "With great power comes great responsibility." Or if you're a comic book purist, with great power must also come great responsibility. It's the edict that Spider-Man lives by, and the burden he carries to do whatever he can to do the right thing. It's such a powerful phrase that it's been used in Supreme Court decisions. We associate that sage advice with the only character in comics who stays dead, Uncle Ben.
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
The three Spider-Men had a bit of their own Martha moment when they find out that Tom Holland's Peter just got that advice from his dying aunt, and they tell him that their Uncle Ben said the same thing to them. Except not so fast, Andrew. Since Garfield's run was so close on the heels of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, there was an effort to distinguish the two. That meant pulling in Peter's pre-MJ love, Gwen Stacy, complete with her tragic ending and tweaking one of the best-known origin stories in superherodom. That meant that Garfield's Uncle Ben advice was actually something his brother, Peter's dad, would say, which was, quote, "If you could do good things for other people, you had a moral obligation to do those things. That's what's at stake here. Not choice, responsibility," end quote.
Not choice, responsibility.
A long way to get the same sentiment. It's the age-old question. Who knew what, and when did they know it? That question will permeate between the visiting villains from the other verses, especially in the range of things that Dr. Otto Octavius knows. When the visiting Doc Ock first sees the Green Goblin, he immediately calls out the man beneath the mask, fellow something of a scientist himself, Norman Osborn. The problem? When Norman left this mortal coil, his dying wish was that Peter not tell his son, Harry Osborn, that his dad became a maniacal runaway Power Rangers villain.
Don't tell Harry.
The green armor took some getting used to. It wouldn't be until the third movie in the Raimi franchise that Harry discovers his dad went cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and decided that, hey, don't mind if I do. By that time, however, Doc Ock had gone down with his experiment. So how did the good doctor know it was Osborn so quickly? Redditor painter_adept proposes a pretty good explanation. Dr. Octavius didn't exactly just fall off the turnip truck. There was a guy flying around with a distinctive cackle with Osborn technology. Then Norman Osborn died and the guy in green stopped menacing Spider-Man. Clearly his colleague had gone off the deep end. Having just gone off of his own deep end, certainly Octavius could relate. Stupid, meddlesome Spider-Man.
Stop, come on.
Yes, my Spider-Man.
Secret identities are a staple of comic book superheroes, but for various reasons, when they make it to the big screen, these superheroes can't wait to start telling all kinds of people their secret identity.
Peter Parker.
Tony Stark just cut to the chase and blurted his out during a press conference.
I am Iron Man.
But come on, who was gonna buy that Iron Man was a bodyguard when every time Iron Man was guarding, the body had suspiciously slipped off? That cover story was almost as weak as Clark Kent's glasses. For No Way Home, there was a bit of a wait for it when it came to people pointing out flaws. Like the fact that Doc Ock only realized it was Peter right before his death, so how did he know Spider-Man was Peter in this reality in the trailer? Well, they had the answer for it in this movie. Everyone came over the moment of their death. What was less clear was the fact that Otto had already had his redemption, sacrificing himself to save the city from his earlier evil doings, but apparently woke up from that and went, nah, I'm gonna go find some Peter Parker for more menacing. He even seems to have forgotten that he was the one who destroyed his machine. One villain who did not get to see the man beneath the mask, however, was Electro. Peter and Gwen managed to overload and disperse Electro before he's yanked into a world with arc reactors and Stark technology for him to feed off of. But if the spell attracted everyone who knew Spider-Man's secret identity, then Electro doesn't fit that description. It's Harry Osborn's Green Goblin that sorts it out by realizing that Peter's girlfriend is helping Spider-Man, and that's after Electro has been scattered to the electrical grid. There's not a lot of ways out of this one, except maybe Doctor Strange just really didn't know what he was doing, and the knowledge thing was just a guess. While it seems like Doc Ock jumped from Earth 1999, it seems like he went straight for Spider-Man, and lucky for him, he got Spider-Man instead of Daredevil, who was busy being a very good lawyer. Could have been worse. He could have caught the Scarlet Witch on a bad day. The good doctor was coming into a more crowded universe. Apparently he thought it was important to look the part though, ditching his trench coat with the no-shirt look for some slightly more modest duds. Marvel is a very science-driven world. There are 7 PhDs in the Avengers, and they're all from one guy. Then there's the engineering genius, Tony Stark. Peter Parker is a budding scientist, talented enough to figure out a web formula to complete his Spider-Man-themed powers. Even though Scott Lang acts goofy, he's playing off his own brand of super smarts because his partner and her parents are also big old brains. But while the science makes the Marvel world go round, it's not an exact science. So when the cured Marko needs a place to duck out while the remaining sinister bunch duke it out, he went into the Statue of Liberty, safe as a house, right? Well, Electro hits that giant metal monument of conductivity with a particularly lethal dose of electricity, which doesn't appear to have affected Marko at all. A ringing endorsement of whatever work boots he was wearing. As Bruce Banner explains, when you travel to the past, that past becomes your future, and your former present becomes your past. That past cannot now be changed by your new future. See? Clear as mud. Endgame spent just as much time thrusting its characters into the past as it did making sure that causality didn't mess up the entire timeline of the MCU to that point. We later learn in Loki that as soon as someone steps out of the timeline when they're not supposed to, the Time Variance Authority is there to clean it up, or a multiverse spools up and suddenly it's Kangs all the way down. They have a lot of work ahead of them once the cured baddies are sent back to their respective worlds. A cured Norman Osborn doesn't die. His death doesn't motivate his son to get revenge on Spider-Man, meaning he doesn't do a double heel turn and rescue Peter to go fight Otto. And Otto doesn't have a Harry Osborn to manipulate. Both Garfield's and Maguire's stories are changed early on in their lives, meaning that they go back to a world that has all kinds of deviations.
You serious?
While the spell managed to put Electro out of his universe despite not actually knowing who Spider-Man really was, it left one villain conspicuously on the table, who not only is known all along that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, but the symbiotic pair are obsessed with Peter Parker for their own reasons. Eddie Brock thinks that Spider-Man ruined his career while the Venom symbiote just doesn't take breakups well. Despite this love-hate connection, Topher Grace's Venom is nowhere to be seen despite having the biggest attachment to Peter Parker. And while we are picking that nit, it's worth pointing out that there are 2 other Green Goblins fully aware of who Spider-Man is who also sat things out, likely for the same non-narrative reason. That reason is this reality isn't big enough for 2 Venoms and 3 Green Goblins. Since the mixed bag that was Spider-Man 3, Sony has rebooted the Spider-Man Super Foe in his own standalone series where the symbiote knows nothing of this Spider-Man guy. That is, until he's whisked away to Earth 199999 to have the MCU explained to him by an exasperated bartender. But if he didn't even know that there was a Spider-Man, much less that he was Peter Parker, what's he doing there? Well, right before Brock's spin through the multiverse, Venom shows him a fraction of the universe that the hive mind of the symbiotes have experienced. Perhaps that hive mind is interdimensional, and it just so happened that it was Tom Hardy's Venom that picked up that call. The real mystery is how they got the Rogers musical on its feet, though from the looks of it, they don't appear to have gone wrong with Julie Tremor creating it. None of those Spider-Man turn off the dark delays, you know?